Welcome to a special bonus episode for the Purpose Of, the podcast about trends, big ideas, and exciting news in the world of EdTech. I'm Keith Tramper.
And I'm Sarah Wood. And today we are joined by a special guest, Mark Lyons, who is the Program Director of Instructional Technology and STEM Integration at Saginaw ISD, and he is also the REMC 9 Director. So today we are going to talk about our podcast confessions at the Outside the Classroom conference that took place at the Hartley Outdoor Education Center in Saginaw County, where we held a podcast confessions booth. Keith and I did, and we recorded reactions, thoughts, and ideas from participants, and we are going to get Mark's feedback on what some of the participants said.
We are going to start our guest interview here with Mark Lyons, the Program Director of Instructional Technology and STEM Integration for Saginaw ISD. We had the opportunity to go out and check out his Outside of the Classroom conference from Saginaw ISD at the Hartley Education Center. And it was such a cool opportunity. We got to talk to a bunch of teachers, and we just wanted to bring that to this podcast so you could hear it as well. So, Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah. Would you take a minute and introduce yourself? Tell us, kind of your education origin story and what you do and why you do it.
Yeah. So I started a long time ago as a special ed teacher, taught in the classroom for 14 years, and I slowly switched over to integration tech. And now I'm at Saginaw ISD, and I'm also the REMC 9 director, and that is the Midland Saginaw area. My job is to try to integrate technology into classes that already exist. So we are not trying to start a classroom of just technology, but we're trying to take some of the things that we have as tools and use them for everyday use, whether it's a ELA classroom or a social studies classroom. And for my position, I get to work with a very large county. So it's kind of fun because I might be going from a school that has a few hundred kids to a school that has a few thousand kids. So it is a really a big spectrum of opportunity.
That is awesome. Sounds like you serve quite a few people in your everyday work, which might have kind of led you to designing the Outside of the Classroom conference, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the Outside of the Classroom conference kind of came out of COVID a little bit. I was going to conferences and I felt like I wasn't getting anything anymore. It kind of was the same sit and get and listen to the sage on the stage type of thing. And I reached out to a friend of mine, Kevin Honeycutt, and he was telling me about all these different conferences that he's been kind of experiencing. And there's one in Colorado, and I believe it's called the Teacher Heart, or the Wild Teacher Heart. And they kind of do things completely different. They have a keynote speaker and all that, but they do everything outside. They do fishing and stuff. So I was lucky enough to have the Hartley Outdoor Education Center in Saginaw County, which the ISD runs. And I'm like, man, what if we had a conference there? And it wasn't about the content, but it was about the connections that the teachers would make. And because I'm lucky enough to know a lot of people that have a lot of good skills from around the state because of REMC, I thought, man, what if we had some of these rich people and one of the REMC directors come in and kind of like showcase what they're doing around the state? So that's kind of like where it started.
That's awesome. Did you hear from any teachers leading up to it? And I know coming out of COVID, everyone's trying to kind of rethink how we're approaching things. But had you heard from any teachers as far as they wanted something different or anything in regards to like, let's do it outside?
No, actually, nobody said that to me.
I love it.
Yeah, a lot of people said there's mosquitoes out there. So no, I think it was a little bit of, this is our second year doing it. So the first year it was a little bit of how many people would actually come out on a Saturday after school has ended? So I think we had some people, maybe some skeptics out there saying, this is not going to really work. But we did it up. We had lots of, giveaways. We made it high energy. We played lots of music. And I think the people that came the first year to Outside the Classroom were kind of like the ones that were like already kind of like high flyers, like they were like, yeah, let's do this on a Saturday. We'll get together and see what we can share. The second year, I think the people showed up because of word of mouth from the first year, just because it's a unique experience. And I know both of you were there and got to experience it. It's just something different. It's different than what educators usually have to do.
Yeah, so Mark, you had this cool idea that you kind of reached out to Sarah and I about
Yeah.
this whole idea of podcasting confessions. Can you tell us like what inspired that, where that came from, and what that was supposed to look like?
Yeah, well, it kind of came from REMC has a project right now, podcasting for educators, where it kind of gives you a whole guide of if you want to start a podcast in your classroom or whatever. So it kind of came out of that. I wanted to showcase what we were kind of doing at REMC, but I also watch all these reality shows, and they always have like a confession room. It's kind of cool. And I knew that you two had a podcast, and you're good at what you're doing. So I thought, wouldn't it be neat if like educators like had to go in and talk about the day, what they learned in the morning, and you guys kind of like just made a little bit of a script up, and I think it turned out awesome. I think it was a neat thing, and we also, if you went into the confession room, you were entered into a drawing to attend McCall. So there were some perks in it too.
Yeah, it was super fun being on our end too. Just being able to capture like the reactions of people in the moment as they were learning and as they were experiencing the conference. It was so much fun. But Sarah and I kind of went through and we picked out a handful of different reactions from people that we were hoping to go through and play for you around a few different themes that we noticed in the conference. So we wanted to play those for you and just have a little bit of a discussion that kind of follows those up.
All right. Sounds good. I like that.
Okay. All right, so Mark, the first theme we noticed was a bunch of people were talking about how fast-paced the conference was. All right, so first up we have Terry, who is from Saginaw.
I like the fact that it's pretty fast-paced and that we're doing hands-on types of things and not just sitting in a classroom or upstairs, that we're actually experiencing nature and learning educational things.
And here's Christy and Becca from Saginaw as well.
I think one of the things that I've noted is, and it seems like at each station they're kind of like, I know it's like a 30-minute, but sometimes you sit at a conference or a PD and it's 3 hours and you're just like, for 3 hours. Where this is like,
it's quick.
It's quick and it keeps you like excited and moving, and obviously being outside is a huge difference.
Yes,
than,
and it being a nice day.
And a beautiful day, yes.
So Mark, what do you think about their responses? And, was this an intentional part of your design for the day?
Yeah, I mean, both Becca and Terry are talking about how fast-paced it was. We had set it up like that because we're showcasing so many different projects and so many different techniques that you could use in the classroom, just in case if somebody was like, oh, this isn't really for me because I'm an athletic director. We're trying to keep it to like a 30-minute session. So it was really fast. And plus it kind of like made you keep moving because most of the stuff, like you had to like take a little hike from one session to the next session. So we were kind of doing that as a design model that we incorporated the first year. And we're like, man, that seems fast, but I think that people like it. So yeah, I mean, we've all been to the conferences where you sit for, 7 hours or 3 hours. And it's like, ooh, man, this is a little tough to handle. And the nice thing was everything that we talked about throughout the whole day was emailed to them and put on our website. So if they were like, okay, that was a crash course of, promoting STEM through literature, and I want to learn more about it, I can just go on to the link now and I can kind of like do a little bit, a deep dive with myself. So.
Nice. But I noticed it was fast paced, but it was also like hands on. There wasn't a lot of sit and get happening. So on that note, here's the next theme: hands-on, applied learning. And we're going to start with Stephen, who is a middle school teacher, but just taking on a high school role, and Mary and Elizabeth from Owasso and Durand. So people from all over the state.
So I don't really care for the sit and listen and the whole they just throw stuff at you. I really more like the direct participation, especially if you're learning, like we were doing Canva upstairs. So it's actually doing it, I think is much more beneficial. And the small group collaboration, because I've been to some conferences where there's a ton of people and you're kind of just there.
I like the fact that at times we can play around with this stuff. Like when you did the sketch noting, you gave us the time to sit and try that. I think that PD now is here it is, 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 here it is. We got to get away from that. Teachers need time to process, to be able to work through things and be able to play with this stuff.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's nice to be able to do it and to see ideas for how to put it into the classroom, but also have time to think about it and think about how we can put it into our classroom as well.
So, Mark, can you speak to the hands-on nature of it and how you got, I guess, the presenters and facilitators of those sessions to really get people to try it out hands-on in that 30-minute fast-paced style?
Well, I like that they said this because I believe when we first put this together, we were hoping that we were going to do what we preach, because we've been trying to tell teachers, hey, you got to do project-based learning, project-based assignments. So with having the presenters there that we had this year, they all understood like it was going to be a hands-on type of day. So having those teachers actually doing it and not just listening, I think is the magic to all of this. I hope they understand that if they take back what they went through outside the classroom, that they can just replicate it in their classroom themselves. So it was nothing like crazy, hard or difficult to figure out. I know, Sarah, you did your project, and people were talking about it the next week. It was very awesome. And I know them even being on the podcast Confessions, that was them actually doing it. I mean, we could have told them about podcasts and that REMC has a guide that they could follow. But for most of them, that was the first time of getting that taste of being on a podcast. So it was like putting them actually in that situation. So I think that's kind of like the key to all of this, and being at a place where we could do it outside. We could walk to a coal mine within like 4 minutes. It's just a perfect combination of project-based learning and the environment that we did it in this year.
And I love that. And that really kind of speaks to something else that Keith and I noticed as we were doing the podcasting conventions, that people really noticed the intentional way that things were designed so that they actually got to try those new things. They had that hands-on, and that they really saw the people that were facilitating those sessions modeling the work that they could do. So just like you said, it could turn around and use it in their classrooms. We're going to hear from Tori, who's in elementary technology in Clarenceville Public Schools, as well as Eric, who's an elementary teacher at Perry Elementary, as far as what they had to say about this.
I think my students will benefit just from me being willing to try new things. And so coming here and learning about new things gives me the kind of permission to try new things, and them seeing me try new things gives them the permission to try new things. And I think that's always just really great to show our students.
I find it very difficult for me to be a teacher of a class that I wouldn't want to be my own student. So you've heard the term lead learner as opposed to teacher. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I become a student, I think about being a teacher. I want to think, well, would I want to be a student in my own class? And so I really enjoyed getting involved in the sketchnoting, for example. But I also realized things that I was struggling with, and then I started thinking, okay, well then as a teacher, how can I make that better for people who struggle like me?
So hearing what Tori and Eric had to say, I know that there was a lot of intention going behind getting the facilitators and structuring that, as far as how you mentioned with PBL. What was your reaction to them trying those new things, actually being immersed in that?
Well, I love these responses because it's taking a profession that we're kind of like told, you need to be the expert in everything that you teach. And typically, like they always talk about, it's going to be 3 years before you're like an expert in this new curriculum that we have. And I always I'm fearful because when you do that, the teachers aren't failing forward. So they're not like modeling for their students. The students will become like, oh, this teacher knows everything and I probably should know everything. And they never see the teacher fail, which I think is like almost criminal, because I want the kids to know that, yeah, we're humans. We're some of the stuff that we're going to try to teach you is new to us too. So I like their responses. And they were kind of talking about having the time and seeing, you model it. Later on in the day, we had lunch and then they went out and painted. So we were purposely giving them unstructured time, but we said, hey, sit by somebody and talk about what you did in the morning. So we gave them time. And I feel like we don't give that to the teachers. We hurry up and do a PD and, okay, see you on Monday, and back in the classroom. And we never have the opportunity to discuss what just happened at that PD. So I think that was kind of a neat thing that we've kind of like really hung our hat on the last 2 years. So you're going to learn some stuff, and guess what? You're going to have unstructured time to just sit and discuss, and probably with a person that's from across the state.
Okay, so one other thing we noticed here, Mark, is that there was this element of just relevance for teachers. Like you said earlier, you might have somebody who's a principal, somebody who's like an athletic director, somebody who's an elementary teacher or high school teacher, and there was a little bit for everyone. It was relevant to everybody. So here's a couple things of what people said, and then I'd love to hear your reflection on those. The first one is from Erin and Nikki. Erin's from Birch Run Schools. She's an elementary teacher, and Nikki is a teacher from Wexford Missaukee ISD, and she teaches severely emotionally impaired classroom.
I like the moving around and being outdoors and not just stuck in chairs listening to somebody talk about, a lot of times, something that doesn't have to do with me. Being self-contained classroom special ed, there's not often PD days that really speak to me.
I think it's great that somebody who teaches what she teaches, and I'm a first grader, and then there's a high school teacher. I think we're all finding something that we can take back, and I think that's what you want out of PD, that you can immediately take it back. And it's nice to be able to talk to other people who are discovering things, and you've never heard of, you're going to be able to go back and start talking with some of your teachers and help people just grow, because it's ever changing very quickly in technology world.
And here's Tori again from Clarenceville.
Any PD that I attend, I hope I'm walking away with something I can use tomorrow. I'm one of those teachers that loves to just jump on things, and so if I learn something at a PD that I can go to school and try tomorrow, that's the best kind of PD for me.
So what are your thoughts on that, Mark?
These are awesome to hear the feedback, because myself being a former special education teacher, I feel like there was a lot of PD that wasn't geared towards me. And outside the classroom, we were trying to have sessions that kind of would make sense to anyone that showed up. So I know that we had, a special ed teacher, and we had a superintendent, we had principals, we had teachers from all different grades and from all over the state. I think one of the neat takeaways is if you do it outside, of the classroom, and use some of these strategies, that these will totally be able to be pulled off anywhere in whatever classroom that you have, with just a couple tweaks. So we were talking about giving them time, after lunch, but there seemed to be discussion after the conference, because everybody was emailed, and then there was feedback. And sometimes, if I don't hear anything back from the people that attend a session, I'm not really sure how they or what they took away from it. But because I got some emails back of asking clarifying questions on how they would run this and how they would run that, that was kind of like a big, meaningful check mark for me, because I was like, okay, this really does work. And some of this was kind of geared towards Hartley, because we have a beautiful plot of land. It's 300 acres. And we have a coal mine, we have snakes down in the basement, we have turtles, we have all these different things that happen there every day throughout the whole school year. And just getting some feet on the property was kind of like a goal of mine, because I'm hoping some of these teachers will maybe come back and visit Hartley, because we have an overnight camp that Annie could come there. So that was kind of like some of the goals that we had written up at the beginning of the year. So I'm glad that they took those points away.
And you had kind of touched on the reflection aspect of things as far as with doing this podcast. Have you ever ran a professional learning experience where you had that kind of in the moment feedback and reflection from participants? And with doing the podcasting confessions, did that change anything in your mind as far as how you move forward through the day?
I mean, yeah, I guess it did change how I approached certain things, but I was really hoping for it to let them reflect during the day. Because I mean, I think you guys started the podcast confessions earlier in the morning and kind of ran it through the afternoon. So it was letting them have that time again of like, okay, I'm going to be asked some questions about the day, and I'm going to have to reflect right now. And I think, I mean, maybe I haven't been to a conference that let me do that before. So I love this concept of like, hey, you're going to go in and talk about the conference that you're actually at right now. And, you know, we're going to read it and we're going to listen to it later on. So it's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, it really was an amazing experience. I know Sarah and I could both say that to just listen to what teachers were experiencing in the moment. I think we got really great feedback on what teachers want out of PD. So I know you said we really wanted these podcasting confessions to be something that was for our educators to experience. And we did do a little bit of like a handout of different things that we do with podcasts, including the REMC materials. But I think Sarah and I got just as much, if not more, out of talking with all the teachers there than they might have. All right, I'm going to bring up one last theme. And the last theme is rethinking the way that we learn and teach. So we have two people here, Erin from Birch Run area schools again, and then Jessica, who's an instructional coach at Saginaw ISD.
I think people underestimate like a first grader, but they have grown up and they only know technology. So it's nice to be able to see the other things where we have to teach them their basic skills of reading and math. But they live in this world that is technology, and it's our responsibility to help them learn technology and learning. They can play technology, but can they learn with technology? And I think that's a battle every level faces, even high schoolers, because I have a few. And that's hard. They need to learn with technology and not just always be so apt to play with it.
I like the pace is great for me. I like the fact that we have a lot of hands-on experiences. I enjoy the collaboration piece. I enjoy nature quite a bit. So for me, that's a big pull. It actually really made me rethink how I will create PD, just the learning path style maybe more. So like taking kind of what's been done here and thinking about how we can pull on, because I was looking at all the different interests, right? Things that some people are like, oh, this is great. And some people are like, oh, this is painful because I'm a perfectionist or whatever, right? So thinking about how when I design PDs, how I can make them more engaging and not just that sit and get a whole bunch of information and then go. So it's really made me kind of like rethink how I might want to do professional learning for adults.
So we've heard, you know, kind of from both ends, somebody who's working with adults and somebody who's working with early elementary students. They're both taking away things about and rethinking about the way that they are doing education in their classrooms with their learners. So what do you think of all that, Mark?
Well, this is interesting because like Erin and Jessica, you know, we just heard from them and they almost have the same theme that we heard from the others. And just if you're listening to this, the podcast confessions were kind of like one or two people at a time, and then they kind of rotated through. So they didn't like get to hear each other. So this is awesome that they're kind of saying the same thing. So just jumping down to what Jessica was talking about, maybe talking about the pace and how she can change up her PD. This is great. I love this. And the funny thing is, they both talked about how technology is a part of, you know, everyday life of the kids coming through right now. But we were outside for just about the entire day. We did ChatGPT in a teepee. You know, like we didn't have any computers, we didn't have any iPads, but we just had a grassroots discussion about AI in the schools. And somebody would kind of start a discussion up about how they're using it in their classroom, or a superintendent was talking about how he's using it for his email. I know he was discussing like he will type his email up, copy and paste it into ChatGPT, and ask it to do a neutral tone. So, I mean, all these kind of like ideas about technology we're done without technology. So I'm hoping that everybody that attended said, oh yeah, it was kind of like a technology conference, but it was on 300 acres of beautiful forest, and there's hardly any technology that we used all day. I mean, Sarah, you did your project and you're using paper and pencils. Like I love this stuff because it's the stuff that we want to teach, and we can just figure out how to incorporate it into what we already do. So I know I heard a lot of people going through the sketch session, and they said it was like therapy. It was, they were calm. And like, when's the last time that teacher doodled? It, it might have been in college. So I love hearing this feedback from those who ran through the summit. So
Yeah, it's pretty incredible to see teachers just as a result of all this engage with it and then rethink entirely the way that they go about it. And you said something in there that was, I thought, pretty poignant, that a conference like this where it's a technology conference, but you're not using a ton of technology along the way. Here and there you did, but it was so much more about the why and the what of technology than it was about the how, which sometimes we just sort of fall into that space of, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of that here and there, but it was really more focused on, like you said, with ChatGPT, why and what are you doing? With sketchnoting, what does this even look like? And why would you even consider this in your classroom? So it was really cool to hear you say that.
Yeah, Keith, when you're saying that, we had a good friend, he ran a geocache session. And he was kind of explaining how you could do this with a classroom, because it's a lot of fun just to do it, but you could tie it into studying for a quiz that's coming up. Or we had another awesome presenter. He used thermal cameras in a coal mine, which sounds like you're just looking at temperatures of the coal and the wall, but he tied it into a bunch of different stuff. So it was like things that we already do, in the classroom, but just with a different twist or different flavor.
I have to say, after the geocaching that was taking place there, like, I totally started doing it with my kids. And
awesome.
I can't turn my brain off with it too, like always thinking about the different connections. And I think that would be such a great way to kind of like take that breakout EDU idea and kind of look at it through a different lens and do it through the geocaching.
Right. I ran into the Canva session, and I'm watching the presenter talk about Canva and how an educator can use it. And I went to take a picture, and the picture had a bear in the background, and a turkey over in the corner. I'm like, where else can you kind of go and talk about Canva? And there's a life-size grizzly bear over in the corner. I'm like, so I just love how it looks and it feels. And we're actually going to be doing one this winter. It's going to be called STEM and S'mores. We tried to run it last year, but for whatever reason, Michigan would not produce any snow for me when it was scheduled. So we're hoping for some snow this winter, and we're going to try it. And Outside the Classroom is already scheduled. So we already have it on the calendar, and we're going to run it again next year.
Awesome. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you that you get snow this time.
Thanks.
And Mark, you totally inspired Sarah and I to look at ways that we can bring learning outside of the classroom and outside, period. We've talked for a long time about trying to do a bonfire PD. We both have like solo stoves, bring it in and just kind of sit around and a bonfire and have some of those what and why conversations and less about the how. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that that's going to happen this year. But you totally inspired us and showed us a model of what that can look like. So thank you. Thanks for inviting us.
There's a team effort, and we've had awesome presenters the last 2 years that we've done this. And I don't have to fly anybody in from like California type of thing. Like, I don't need that name to be there. I think the state of Michigan is very lucky because we have a lot of folks that are involved with RITs and METs, and they're experts in what they do. And I'm not sure if we tap into them enough. So I feel very, very fortunate that we have this idea, and then we have all these people that just step up to the plate. It's a home run every time now that we've done this.
Yeah, I know that, like he said, we were totally inspired, and I totally want to go next year already.
Awesome.
So count me in. And I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, But what would you say, like, your impressions of the event as a whole are, or anything that happened where you're like, you know what, I want to change this for next year to make it meet the needs of teachers a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, we started planning almost the day after because we held this on Saturday, and I met with some of my team members on Sunday, and we're like, you know what, we could do this a little bit different. We should add this in there. So I think as we go through this, we become a little bit better at like, okay, this is what the teachers will probably need for next year. So yeah, some of those things are already in the works right now. But the impression that I always take away from this, and I mean, we've only done this twice, but I've been to a lot of conferences all over the country. And this one always has a feeling when you leave of, I don't know, I feel like I made more friends there type of thing. Like sometimes I go to a conference, I'm like, yeah, I'll probably go back and look at that slide deck and see if I can use something. But the chances of me actually doing it when I get back into my, office are slim. But this one, I feel like I have a bunch of different connections now. And we give away T-shirts that have, outside the classroom. And now I see them around the district, which is really awesome because I'm like, hey, my friend. And I feel when other schools come and experience this, they might start up their own at their location. And I kind of feel like that's part of this goal. I mean, I don't want outside the classroom to be the one outside conference. I want these to grow everywhere and have more people experience what we got to go through.
That's so true. And I think there are so many benefits I mean, I know scientifically there's so many benefits to being outside, but when you can combine that with learning, it's just a pretty awesome equation. In thinking about the podcasting reflections and knowing that you've already reflected on the experience for this year, do you see any advantages of doing that and having that immediate feedback for your planning because you already started the next day, which I did not expect you to say, to be honest?
Oh, yeah. Well, the planning started on the drive back when we're packing up. I mean, we were kind of like going through like, okay, we need to change this and we want to add this and we want this back again. Yeah, I would love to have this podcasting confession again because, how many people did we have run through it? I mean, I think we had about 40 people at the conference, but maybe about 20 maybe that got to run through the podcasting experience. I would love to have something like this again. And I just met with some teachers the other day. We're running a morning caffeinated PD at coffee shops around our region in Saginaw County. And one of the things that they were coming with questions about was the podcasting. So I'm like, well, what do you need? What do you have to have? And they're like, well, we don't know what kind of microphone do we, like what type of platform do we need? So I think the interest is there. I think they understand how they could use it in the classroom, but I think it's almost to the point where like, okay, they're ready to start the next step. What's the next clear step of me actually doing a podcast in my 5th grade classroom?
That's amazing. We've worked with a few teachers in our area to kind of do something similar and try that out. And, I said it a little bit before, but we did make some resources that we'll tag in the show notes here. So if this is really speaking to you, or Mark, if you want to share it with your teachers,
thank you so much.
Feel free to grab it and use it. We try to make everything so it's, transferable so anybody can use it.
Well, you guys rock, and I can't thank you two enough. I kind of like gave you a blank canvas and was hoping that you guys would just paint away, and you both did. I thought it was a perfect way to get that feedback and explore another avenue that they would probably never go down. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mark. We really appreciated hearing what you had to say. And I know as Keith and I were reflecting on our own experience doing the podcasting confessions, we felt that it was super important to bring your voice into the conversation and not only reflecting upon what people had shared, but just the experience as a whole and how to kind of look at PD a little bit differently to meet the needs of teachers, which ultimately meets the needs of our students. So we really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and with that being said, if someone has questions for you, what would be the best way for them to contact you for any questions or information about outside the classroom?
Yeah, if anybody wants more information or, looking to maybe come to 2024 outside the classroom, they can contact me at Lyons at SISD.cc. And I'm sure you probably put my email in the show notes too, but feel free to ask me questions, or, I'm willing to share our agenda and how we set up ours and some of our notes that we've, created over the last 2 years if you're looking to start your own in your own region. So
Awesome. And I'm going to throw a little challenge out to our viewers as well, our listeners, I should say, that to this summer, try and do something outside where you are challenging yourself in a different way, and maybe see what learning connections you can make. And then if you're on social media, go ahead and tag Keith and myself and Mark in it, and we'd love to hear and see what you're doing.
And that's it for this episode of For the Purpose Of. Thank you for tuning in. And a special thanks to Mark Lyons for joining us to talk about the Outside the Classroom Conference.
And we always welcome your feedback. Feel free to email us at edtech@kentisd.org. And you can always find all things edtech at bit.ly/IamEdTech. If you like For the Purpose Of, we'd love for you to share it with a friend. And we will catch you next time on For the Purpose Of.
This podcast is a service of Kent ISD. It is produced by Ron Houtman, Sarah Wood, and Keith Tramper. Our theme music is Neon Nights by Scott Holmes Music, and our ad music is Vienna Beat by Blue Dot Session.